His character. Georgie Zayden, George Gordon, who died recently, was a famous Christian historian, linguist, philosopher, and poet of the modern Egypt. Arabic was his mother tongue, but he was so well versed in English, French, German, Persian, and Latin that he used to contribute to historical and philosophical magazines of France, Germany, and England. About Hazrat Ali he says, "None can praise to the extent that he, Ali, deserves." So many instances of his piety and fear of God are cited that one starts loving and venerating him. He was a true, strict, and scrupulous follower of Islam. His words and deeds bore stamps of nobility, sagacity, and courage of conviction. He was a great man having his own independent views about life and its problems. He never deceived, misled, or betrayed anybody. In various phases and periods of his life he exhibited marvelous strength of body and mind, which were due to his true faith in religion and in his sincere belief in truth and justice. He never had servant and never allowed his slaves to work hard. Often he would carry his household goods himself, and if anybody offered to relieve him of the weight he would refuse. The famous Egyptian philosopher and professor of Islamic of Al-Azhar University, Allama Muhammad Mustafa Bek Najib, in his equally famous book, Himatul Islam, Part 1, page 98, says, "What can be said about this Imam? It is very difficult to fully explain his attributes and qualities. It is enough to realize that the Holy Prophet, A.S., had named him the gateway of knowledge and wisdom. He was the most learned person, the most brave man, and the most eloquent speaker and orator. His piety, his love of God, his sincerity and fortitude in following religion were of such high order that none could aspire to reach him. He was the greatest politician because he hated diplomacy and loved truth and justice. His was the policy as taught by God. On account of his sagacity and through knowledge of human mind he always arrived at correct conclusion and never changed his opinions. His was the best judgment, and had he no fear of God he would have been the greatest diplomat amongst the Arabs. He is loved by all, and everyone has a place for him in his heart. He was a man of such surpassing and preeminent attributes and such transcending and peerless qualities that many learned men got perplexed about him and imagined him to be an incarnation of God. Several men amongst Jews and Christians love him, and such philosophers who came to know of his teachings bowed down before his incomparable vast knowledge. Roman kings would have his pictures in their palaces, and great warriors would engrave his name on their swords. Another philosopher and historian of Egypt, Ostad, Professor Muhammad Kamil, in a review on the character of Ali, page 40, pays his tributes in the following words. His life is an agglomeration of pleasing incidents, bloody encounters and sad episodes. His personality is very prominent on account of his transcending and high qualities. Each aspect of his life is so lofty and glorious that a study of one phase would make you feel that it was the best phase of his character and the most beautiful picture of his personality, while contemplation of any other phase will enchant you more, and you will come to the conclusion that no human being can attain that height. And the third aspect will fascinate you equally, and you will realize that before you is a personality of such great eminence that you cannot fully appreciate its greatness, and you will feel that Ali was an imam, leader, in battlefield, was an imam, leader, in politics, was an imam, leader, in religion, and also an imam in ethics, in philosophy, in literature, in learning and wisdom. It is not difficult for God to create such a person. The historian John J. Poole, author of The Life of H.M. Queen Victoria, in his book Studies in Mohammedanism says, "This prince was a man of mild and forbearing character, wise in counsel and bold in war. Muhammad had given him the surname of Lion of God. Ali and his sons Hassan and Hossein were truly noblemen, men of righteousness, men of a brave, a humble, and a forgiving spirit. Their lives deserve to be commemorated, for there was a peculiar pathos about them, their lives, which were not spent selfishly or in vain." As Matthew Arnold, Essays in Criticism, says, "The sufferers of Karbala had aloft to the eyes of millions the lesson so loved by the sufferer of Calvary, representation of crucifixion. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls." He further says, Ali was the first caliph to protect and encourage national literature. This prince was a scholar himself, and many of his wise sayings and proverbs are published in a book. It is a remarkable work and deserves to be more widely read in the West. B. N. Abil Haid, the Mutazili commentator of Nahj al-Balagha, says, Hazrat Ali had a personality in which opposite characteristics had so gathered that it was difficult to believe a human mind could manifest such a combination. He was the bravest man that history could cite, and such brave persons are always hard-hearted, cruel, and eager for bloodshed. On the contrary, Ali was kind, sympathetic, responsive and warm-hearted person, qualities quite contradictory to the other phase of his character and more suited to pious and God-fearing persons. He was very pious and God-fearing person, and often pious and religious persons avoid society and do not care to mix with men of sins and men of wrath. Similarly, warriors, kings and dictators are usually arrogant and haughty. They consider it below themselves to mix with poor, lowly and humble persons. But Ali was different. He was friend to all. As a matter of fact, he had a tender spot in his heart for poor and humble, and for orphans and cripples. To them he always was a kind friend, a sympathetic guide and a fellow sufferer. He was meek unto them but haughty and arrogant against famous warriors and generals, so many of whom he had killed in hand-to-hand combats. He was always kind but strict with wayward persons, sympathetically teaching them the ways to God. He always smiled and passed happy and witty rejoinders. It was difficult to overcome him in debates or repartees. His rejoinders and retorts always bore high mark of culture, education and knowledge. He was a scion of a very illustrious, rich and noble clan, as well as son-in-law and great favorite of the Holy Prophet, a.s. At the same time he was the greatest warrior and marshal of his time, yet in spite of his riches he ate, dressed, and lived like a poor person. To him wealth was for the use of other needy persons, not for himself and his family. Change of times and change of circumstances did not bring any change in his bearing, mien, or character. Even when he ascended the throne of Arabia and was acclaimed as the Caliph, he was the same Ali as they had found him to be during the previous regimes. Once in the society of Abdullah, son of Imam Malik bin Hanbal, a discussion took place about Ali and his caliphate. Abdullah brought the discussion to an end, saying that the caliphate did not bring any honor or glory to Ali, but it was itself honored and glorified by Ali, and it received the status actually due to it. I want to add one more point to the points discussed by bin Abil Hayd. World cannot quote an example other than that of Ali, a first-class warrior and a marshal who is also a philosopher, a moralist and a great teacher of religious principles and theology. A study of his life shows that his sword was the only help that Islam received during its early days of struggle and its wars of self-defense. For Islam he was the first line of defense, the second line of defense and the last line of defense. Who was with him in the battles of Badr, Uhud, Khandak, Khaybar and Hunayn? This is one aspect of his life. While the other phase of his character is portrayed by his sermons, orders, letters and sayings. What high values of morality they teach, what ethics they preach, what intricate problems of Unitarianism they elucidate, how rich they are in philosophy, how they try to train us to be kind, good, benevolent and God-fearing rulers, and faithful, sincere and law-abiding subjects, how they persuade us to be warriors who can fight only for God, truth and justice, and not mercenaries murdering and plundering for wealth and riches, and how they instruct us to be teachers who can teach nothing injurious and harmful to mankind. Was there any such combination before, and will there ever be? Olsner, the famous French Orientalist and author of Les Effets de la Religion de Muhammad, says, pure, gentle and learned without fear and without reproach, he set the world the noblest example of chivalrous grandeur of character. His spirit was a pure reflection of that of Muhammad, it overshadowed the Islamic world and formed the animating genius of succeeding ages. Osborne, in Islam under the Arabs, Pys, Ali had been advised by several of his counselors to defer the dismissal of the corrupt governors previously appointed until he himself was sure against all enemies. The Bayard of Islam, the hero without fear and without reproach, refused to be guilty of any duplicity or compromise with injustice. This uncompromisingly noble attitude cost him his state and his life, but such was Ali, he never valued anything above justice and truth. Gibbon, in The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 5, says, the zeal and virtues of Ali were never outstripped by any recent proselyte. He united the qualification of a poet, a soldier and a saint. His wisdom still breathes in a collection of moral and religious saying, And every antagonist in the combats of tongue or of sword was subdued by his eloquence and valor. From the first hour of mission to the last rites of his funeral, the apostle was never forsaken by this generous friend, whom he delighted to name his brother, his vicegerent and the faithful Aaron of second Moses. Masudi, the famous historian of Islam, says, "If the glorious name of being the first Muslims, a comrade of the Prophet in exile, his faithful companion in the struggle for the faith, his intimate associate in life, and his kinsman, if a true knowledge of the spirit of his teachings and of the book, if self-abnegation and practice of justice, if honesty, purity, and love of truth, and if knowledge of law and science constitute a claim to preeminence, then all must regard Ali as the foremost Moslem. We shall search in vain to find, either among his predecessor, save the Holy Prophet, or among his successor, those virtues with which God had endowed him."